Hey guys, what is going on? This is Travis P11. I'd like to welcome you back to the channel. And today we're going to show you how to disassemble and clean and reassemble the Hi Point model JXP10 or the 10mm. Now this is a new pistol that's just come out this year from Hi Point, although the design is based on some of the other Hi Points that are already out there. If you've never disassembled and cleaned a Hi Point pistol before, it does take a little bit more specialty tools. It does take a little more work to disassemble and clean than it does, say, a Glock or an M&P or a SIG. So we're going to go and talk about what you need to do the cleaning. We'll take you through it step by step. Obviously, you want to be very careful when you do so. There's a couple things about this that you don't want to do, that you don't really have to worry about when it comes to other pistols, and we'll talk about that when we get there. So first of all, tools of the trade. What do you need to do the cleaning? Okay, so first of all, you need some sort of a cleaner, lubricant and protectant. I like to use Cleanse Oil Field and Range Cleaner. This stuff works really, really good. You can order it over at cleanseoil.com. I'm not sponsored by them, but I do like their products. They work really well. If you don't want to go that route, you can get some Safariland Break-Free CLP, or you could use Rem Oil or Ballistol. I'll let you guys argue in the comments which oil lubricant is your favorite one. I also have what's called the needle oiler. These are kind of nice for just little tiny areas where you want to put a small drop of oil. They just have a little needle on the top. They come in very handy. They're good to have. Also, you'll need some sort of a cleaning rod or a bore snake. If you've got a 10mm bore snake, you're in good luck. Otherwise, a 10mm bore brush like the one that you see right here will do the job too. And I'll be using it on a single piece cleaning rod. Now, normally I use bore snakes because they're a little bit quicker, but we're not going to do that for this video because I don't have one for this pistol. I just got it a couple days ago. I also have just a smaller plastic cleaning rod. These are kind of nice to have just to push a patch down the barrel. It also saves a little bit of time when you're trying to maneuver everything else. Little nylon bristle brush is very handy. You can use an old toothbrush if you want to. Those work just fine. Cotton swabs, Q-tips. These are called Tipton Power Swabs. They work pretty good. They do hold their form or shape a little bit better when you're cleaning. They don't fall apart as easily as Q-tips do. Also, they have a wooden handle and not a paper handle, so they tend to stay in one piece a little bit longer. Cotton patches for cleaning. You can cut up a cotton t-shirt if you want to. Otherwise, I just get bulk cotton patches at my local Shields. They work fine. One of the little specialty tools that you'll need for this is a 1/8 inch pin punch. If you don't have one, you should probably get one. You're going to need it to take this firearm apart. Now, they recommend every 1,500 to 2,000 rounds between cleanings. And in fact, the manual doesn't say that you have to do a cleaning right away. So I know a lot of people take the Hi Points right out of the box and shoot them. You can do that if you want to. I haven't shot this yet, so I do want to take it apart, take a look and see what it looks like under the hood and just kind of see what the finishing work looks like on the gun. Now, it's a blowback style gun with a fixed barrel, so it's going to be a little bit different style than, say, your Glock, your M&P, etc. And then finally, some nitrile gloves to keep the carbon, grease, all the muck off your hands. A lot of these are petroleum-based cleaners, so you want to try to keep that stuff out of your skin if at all possible. Oh, also handy, maybe necessary, to take that pin out that we're going to have to drive out with a pin punch is a roll of masking tape. Shout out to Defense Dad for suggesting this to me years ago on a different firearm that we cleaned. And then I've got a tape measure here just because when you take off the slide for the Hi Point, you have to pull back 3/8 of an inch and move up. If you're not sure like what kind of a distance we're talking about here, you might want to look it up on a tape measure. I'm also going to show you and kind of give you a clue as to what's going to work well to do that. So as for taking off the grips and further disassembly, not necessary. But before we do anything, let's go ahead and check the firearm and ensure that it is in fact unloaded. As you can see, the safety is off, so obviously you want to be really careful with it. Now, real quick, two things, okay? When we do take the slide off, do not pull the trigger because the sear's under pressure. You're going to launch it and you're going to have to reassemble it, so don't pull the trigger once the slide is off the gun. And two, don't hold the frame upside down at all. Don't shake it or do anything like that. Keep it level when you wipe it off and clean it, so just a little bit different from some of the guns we've talked about before. It is definitely a large handgun. So to check that it is in fact unloaded, go ahead and press the magazine release button right here. Okay, release your magazine. The magazine is empty. You will need an empty magazine also to do disassembly, just to give you a heads up. So if there's ammo in it, take it off to the side and go ahead and take the ammunition out. Pull back the slide, check the chamber, verify that it's empty. It is. Go ahead and set the pistol back down and we will go ahead and get started. Okay guys, so the first thing that we want to do is we want to pull back the slide and we want to lock it with the safety lever in this notch right here. That's going to expose the pin that we have to punch out in order to pull the slide off. So we're going to do that first. So again, the firearm is in fact unloaded. Okay, and we're going to pull back and then press up with the safety button right there. So that looks just like that when it's locked into place. Hopefully you guys can see that okay. And we will go on to our next step. Now the pin you're going to drive out is going to be right here towards the rear. It's going to be just in front of the orange dot. And once we push the pin out, you don't want to do anything at that point until we're ready to move on. Okay, so we want to drive this pin out. Now, I'm not sure if we can push it out all the way, but if we start to hit the surface, we can use the little roll of tape to put it up on to prop it up. So I've got my 1/8 inch pin punch, and we're going to go ahead and drive it out. Actually, I'm going to add a little light to this so I can see a little bit better. Okay, there we go. Now we'll go ahead and drive out that pin. Doesn't take a lot of force, it's coming right out. Okay, it looks like I am hitting it. This is what it looks like as you drive it out. You can see the pin right there. Okay, we'll go ahead and finish it off on the roll of tape up here. There we go. Go ahead and push out the pin. All right, just fell out, and we will move on to our next step. Okay, now that the pin's out, the next step that you want to follow is to take an empty magazine. Okay, verify that it's empty. And go ahead and pull the trigger, and this will release the striker. You want to make sure that the striker is not cocked when you take it apart. You can, but it makes it much easier to take the slide off if the gun's not cocked. So again, empty magazine in, pull the trigger, and you're all set to go. Okay, so for the next step in the process, you see where the position of the slide is. We're gonna have to pull back about 3/8 of an inch, which basically takes that cutout right there and just touches the back part of the grip right there. So when you pull back, that's about 3/8 of an inch. So you're gonna have to pull back about 3/8 of an inch and then lift up, and the slide's gonna come off. But while you're doing it, you have to make sure that your finger is over the back. So we'll put the finger over the back, we'll pull back and lift off of the slide. I'm gonna have to do this from a different angle because of the filming. And then we're simply going to slide everything forward. Your recoil spring is gonna come out, your slide's gonna come off, but the barrel is gonna stay fixed into place. So I just wanted to explain it first before we do it so you understand what's about to happen. Okay, before we remove the slide, go ahead and take off the thread protector. You want to be careful when you pull the slide off. We just want to make sure this doesn't get caught when you're trying to take the slide off the front, because it could, and that could cause some difficulty there. But be very careful when you pull the slide off because you don't want to damage those threads. Okay, now we'll go ahead and move on. Okay, with your finger over the back, what we're going to do now is go ahead and pull back about 3/8 of an inch and then up and then push forward. There we go. And you can see what it looks like. So make sure you don't tip this upside down. Make sure you do not pull the trigger. We can kind of show you the top. Right, and you can see how there's a guide rod and a recoil spring in here. You can go ahead and pull that recoil spring out and that guide rod and set it off to the side. And we will start off by cleaning the barrel and just simply wiping off the frame. There's not much there, but again, you want to be very careful again not to pull the trigger. Again, common mistakes that a lot of people make that you don't normally have to worry about with other pistols that are out there. Okay, so if you see any debris on here, dirt, grass, etc., you can go ahead and take your brush and just simply brush off any of that debris if necessary. I just have a single drop of oil on a patch. And we're just simply going to wipe off all the surfaces. Okay, just get in there and wipe off the feeding ramp. It doesn't take a lot of lubrication for this firearm to function. In fact, it doesn't have the traditional rails that you're used to with other firearms. Go ahead and wipe off the barrel. Really, that's about all it's going to take right now for this first part. Okay, now we will go ahead and put a couple drops of oil on a patch and we'll push that through the back of the barrel. Then we'll push the bore brush through and continue the cleaning. Now you're also going to start to notice metal to metal contact points. You're going to start to see some wearing and you're going to start to see some of the finish come off. Those are places where you definitely want to make sure that you have lubrication, but just a light coating of oil, say 1 drop on a patch, over all the surfaces is really all it's going to take. So make sure you clean off those threads. Make sure you get underneath the barrel too, because we can't take the barrel out. So with these CLPs and cleanse oil and stuff like that, what I like to do is just push the barrel through, push the patch through a couple times, all the way through. Now, since we're just using a patch, you can pull back if you want to, but I don't ever do that with the bore brush, but we can push it in a couple times and let that sit for like, say, 3 or 4 minutes before you push the brush down the barrel. Go ahead and take your recoil spring and just wipe that off with your patch that's got some oil on it. Just get that cleaned up. You can go ahead and pull out your recoil spring, your guide rod. There we go. Just have a little bit of powder residue on it. Now make sure that you put this guide rod back into the exact same side as the recoil spring. Sometimes it does make a difference with the way that the spring is wound, so put your guide rod back in there and set that off to the side. We're all done with that. Wipe off the inside of the threads here of your muzzle cap. Thread protector. Put a punch in there and just kind of move it around a little bit, get the threads cleaned off. Okay, those are nice and clean. Okay. Now go ahead and take your 10mm bore brush and go ahead and just put a couple drops of oil on it and run those down the barrel. Go ahead and push. There we go. Now I don't like to pull back. The manual says you can. I don't do that, so I'm going to unscrew it. Pull the rod back and just push it through one more time. It's really not that dirty. There we go. Okay, we'll do that one more time. Okay, now you can push another patch down the barrel with another drop of oil on it. If it comes off clean, you're basically done. If it's still fairly dirty, you can repeat this process 2 or 3 times until the barrel comes out clean. So I'm going to put a couple drops of lubricant there, some oil on the patch, and push it through. This is just kind of a general protectant just to make sure the barrel doesn't rust out. Okay, so go ahead and push that down. Push it through the barrel. Okay, there we go. Go ahead and grab my bore light here real quick. Again, you can use any flashlights that you want to. Okay, the barrel's nice and clean. There's nothing in there. All right, we'll go ahead and set the frame off to the side. Make sure that it's upright. Again, don't let it flip over on its top. Okay, so for the slide, you can see it's pretty ugly in here. Again, a lot of rough finish marks and stuff, but that's pretty typical. So you got a little plastic piece right here, a little retainer. Go ahead and pull that out and set it down. Then you've got your spring, and then you have your striker, and that's really about it. So what we'll do is just a single drop of oil on a patch. We're going to wipe them off, but then we're also going to wipe them dry because we don't want any oil getting in that firing pin channel, because that could cause debris to build up. So go ahead and wipe off this little retaining pin here, which, by the way, this does have a specific hole that it goes into when you put the gun back together. Go ahead and wipe off your firing pin. Very similar design to my Hi Point carbine. They tend to share a lot of the same design cues between the carbine and also the rifle. So this is kind of a little double spring setup here. There's a bigger spring and a thinner spring in the back. Just make sure that the big spring stays over the small spring, and that you put it back in the gun exactly how you took it out, okay? So we'll go ahead and put that back together real quick. So just the big spring and the small spring, put the small spring in the big spring. There you go. And it'll be assembled just like that. Now, the inside of this channel in here, what you can do is grab your Q-tip, one drop of oil. Again, we do not want to over lubricate. Go ahead and just put it in that channel. And just go ahead and just wipe it out, okay? Just go ahead and give it a little cleaning there. Okay. Then what I like to do is to take a dry Q-tip, because we want to keep this channel as dry as possible, and just go ahead and put a dry Q-tip in there. You can repeat this process a couple times if you need to. There might be some oil or grease in there, like there's some crud that's coming off on it right now. No problem. Okay, again, single drop of oil. Now we want to get these little channels that are off to the sides here. Okay, so go ahead and get those. There we go. Now those, you can leave some lubricant on them. That's totally fine because there's going to be metal to metal contact on there, so that's not an issue. Okay, if you have some oil down in there, not a problem. On the sides at least, not a problem. Now take your patch and go ahead and just wipe out the inside of the slide. Now again, this is the first time this gun's ever been cleaned. With a 10mm hole, very, very easy to get the index finger in there to clean it out. Go and wipe off the sides. Also wipe off the sides of the rails here. Now, if it's really dirty inside, you can go ahead and scrub it out with your bristle brush if you want to. Just put a drop of oil on the bristle brush and wipe it out. Otherwise, I think we're looking pretty good right now. The key here, again, thin coat of oil inside, and that's it. And I can already see where some of the paint is where there's metal to metal contact with the frame of the firearm. So you can see that there's some paint being scraped off there. Those are showing you contact points where you definitely want to make sure you've got some lubricant there. But really, that's about it. Now the magazine itself, just go ahead and wipe it off. We're not going to disassemble it. It's not necessary. You're good to go. From the factory, these don't have any kind of oil or grease inside the magazines. So you just want to make sure there's something on the outside just to keep it from rusting, especially if the gun's going to sit around or you keep it as a truck gun, etc. All right, let's go ahead and get started with the process of reassembly. Now, just in case you drop these springs or something happened, there's a hole that's in the back of the firing pin, okay? The spring only fits in the hole one way, so if you have it reversed, it's not going to work for you. So that just shows you what it's going to look like. So essentially, that's what it's going to look like when you put it back in the channel of the slide. And then you're going to have this little pin behind it that's going to keep everything in place, and you lock that down into the frame, okay? So that's what it looks like. You got the retaining pin, you've got the little striker spring, and then the striker itself or the firing pin itself. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is go ahead and take your firing pin and drop it in the channel in the rear. There we go. Now you can see how that protrudes out. The pin's going to stick out. That's why you want that pin back. When you go to put the slide back on, you want to make sure that the gun has not been cocked, because otherwise it can cause that pin to push out, and that's the last thing that you want. So I do have it down here just because it's going to get pushed anyway. And then take your striker spring and go ahead and put that back into place. There we go. And then you're going to take your little retaining pin, and it's going to basically keep everything back in place right here at the back. That's going to go in, and that's going to go down when you put the slide back together. So we'll kind of talk you through the process here in a little bit, okay? All right, so reassembly of this can be just a little bit tricky. What you want to do is make sure that the front of the guide rod is pressing the front of this tab, and this can just be basically downright frustrating when it comes to reassembly. We got to get enough of the barrel in here so that we can push the slide down and obviously lock this little pin in the rear here. But once you get the slide over and the recoil spring doesn't fly off, you're in pretty good shape. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So go ahead and press the two together. Okay, we're going to slowly slide the two together. Okay, now bring that pin back in the rear, and you're going to push that pin in the hole. Okay, there we go. And we're good to go. Okay, and it did go back together. Okay, now at this point, what we want to do is we want to pull back on the slide and lock into place like we did before. There we go. Again, you're going to hear the springs make noises. That's normal the first time you kind of scrunch it back together. Now it's locked back into place. Let's go ahead and drive that pin back in, and we are just about done. Okay, so now what we want to do is we need to reseat the pin like we did when we first disassembled it. So we're going to put the pin back in the side that it came out of. Okay, there we go. Now just go ahead and tap to get it seated initially. There you go. Then go ahead and finish it off with your pin punch here. This will just help ensure that you don't flatten out the pin. Hopefully you guys can see that. Okay. Now you got to make sure that pin is flush with the frame. If it's not, you're not going to be able to release your slide, or your slide could get caught. So if the pin is flush with the frame on both sides, you're going to be in pretty good shape. Okay, now at this point, I went ahead and put the muzzle protector back on the end of the barrel here. We'll go ahead and push back, push down on the slide, release, and then we'll do a little function test, and we are basically done. Okay, so make sure that you've got your magazine inserted. Make sure that the magazine is in fact empty. Okay, you're going to pull back on the slide. Okay, it's going to lock back into place like it's catching an empty round. Go ahead and release the slide. Make sure the chamber's empty. Okay, pull back so that the slide goes forward. Okay, put your magazine into place. Go ahead and pull the trigger. There you go. You should hear the gun dry fire. Okay, you can do that a couple times if you want to. There you go. All right, guys, so that is basically what it comes down to disassembling and reassembling the Hi Point JXP10. It's not impossible, it's just not fun. Again, but with the cycle of 1,500 to 2,000 rounds between cleanings because of the blowback design, it really can take a lot of wear and tear before you have to clean it. For some people, that might be a once every 5 year kind of thing, or maybe once a year, depending on how much you shoot it. Me, I just wanted to take it apart and clean it, take a look at it underneath the hood the first time before we actually take it out. But otherwise, I think that's it. So I want to thank you all for watching. Thanks for checking out my cleaning of the Hi Point JXP10 10mm pistol. Make sure that you guys like and subscribe, and don't forget I got a little podcast that I do called Caliber Corner, which is Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. over here on YouTube, 8 a.m. Central Time. Make sure you check it out. In the meantime, I want you guys to have fun. I want you to be safe. Go get your Hi Point out to the range, and as you know, we will talk to you soon. All right, bye-bye, guys. Take care.